etc. And they're all listed. Next, what's highlighted are the properties. This is where you're going to be able to edit the properties, such as like the color, position, etc., manually or even through code. I like to look at the properties a lot just because like it gives me an idea of like what properties does like the specific instance or class have, so that I'm able to edit it directly in my code. Next, what you see is highlighted is the output. This is where you're going to be able to see all like the warnings, different print statements, and the errors that your code is outputting to the output. That makes sense. And finally, this is the command bar. This is where you're going to be able to experiment with like the different code. I use it a lot to like test different functions to mess with like the different properties on the go. Alrighty, so let's do our first exercise to get your hands a little dirty. So as I mentioned, there's the command bar. So I'm going to open up Studio. So you should have your Studio open. I'm going to give you guys like 5 seconds to get your self set up. But essentially what we're going to do in this exercise is play around with the base plate, this giant block right here. We're going to play around with like the color, the name. I don't want to mess around with the position because we're going to need it later, so don't want to mess with that. But we're just going to play around in the command bar and just like overall, how does the command work? So let's get started. So you're going to see down here, run a command. Essentially, like I mentioned, you're able to test out different like really short instances of lines of code in there to just test out different things. So let's just start off really basic. So let's just play with some math. So 2 plus 2 is 4. So what you can do is in the command literally type just like 2 plus 2, and right now it's not going to like give you the expression 4 or like output 4, because what you're going to need to do next is as you're working with code, it's all compiling, and so it needs some sort of like either, how do I say this? Like essentially you need like a variable attached to it or even just like a simple print statement. So what you're going to do is just put this like 2 plus 2 inside of a print function. So you're just going to put print and then do 2 plus 2. So now you can see over here on my right, 4, hopefully. I don't know if it's tiny in your screen. I'm so sorry if it is, but you should see 4. Another thing that you can do is, play around. So maybe you want to print out some sort of string. So you can say hello world, print that out, and you'll see in your output, hello world. This is really cool, really basic stuff with using the commands. So let's actually try to play around with like the base plate itself. So as I mentioned earlier, there's the Explorer. You're going to see under your workspace, the base plate. So what you're going to want to do when you're like coding and trying to work with different objects is you're going to want to like, reach that object. So, and I'm going to mention all this as we go through the like talk, but I just want to get your hands a little dirty. But essentially what you're going to do is let's just get rid of this print because now we want to actually do some sort of command. So let's play around with like the color of the base plate. So I'm going to get to the base plate. So what you're going to essentially do is you're going to want to call the class. So you're going to call workspace, and then you're going to do dot, and it's like a hierarchy kind of thing, like similar to like when you're working with the file explorer, you're trying to reach the specific object that you're going to be working with. So in this case, I'm going to be working with the base plate. So I'm going to do workspace dot base plate. Now that we have the base plate, I want to work with one of its properties. As I mentioned, let me go over here. We want to work with its color. Right now, it's just this, gray, but let's change it up. So you can do baseplate dot color, and you're going to set it equal to something. So right now, it's gray, as I mentioned, and another thing too is I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I just want to show you how you can work with it. But essentially, in order to like change its color, you're gonna have to like call in the color 3. So maybe not using the color, rather we can use like the brick color, which will just make it simpler to work with. So we're gonna set its brick color, and we're gonna set it equal to a random value. So in order to actually set the color brick color to a random value, you're just gonna want to call it brick color and do dot random. Again, I will go over this like as we're going through the tutorial. It's just getting through the dirty parts of like working with commands. And then what you're gonna do is after you have it set up, you're just gonna want to run it. And look at that, it changed color. It's lighter. I wanted something like blue. Oh, here you go, lighter green. Woo! So yeah, essentially, like I mentioned, you can work with the command prompt to just like test really simple code just to see how it operates so that when you're working on larger code, you're able to see it tested in action. Cool. All right, let's go back to the slides. So did that. We changed the color. And all right, cool. So let's start talking about like different types in on Roblox. Types are essentially like different things that you're going to be working with, whether they be like values, instances, arrays, or even nothing. They are like very important. Uh, you'll be using these pretty much everywhere, so you can't really hide from them. These are just some of the common types that you'll be working with. So an example being numbers. As you saw, 2 plus 2, so it's a number. Numbers are just numbers. They can be whole numbers, integers, and even negatives. Some examples being, like 0, 5, negative 4.2, and even pi. Numbers can tell us a lot of things, in games, such as like how many players are in the server, how many parts are in a specific folder, how many coins you own, etc. Another thing being strings. Strings can be anything. They can hold anything that you would like it to hold, such as like phrases like hello world, characters from the alphabet, such as the letter A, even usernames such as my own, WooleyWool. And you can use strings pretty much to search for usernames. For instance, if you want a specific action to be done to that specific user, maybe giving them unlimited cash. Next are booleans. Booleans are pretty much just true or false. They can be used to see like whether a value is equal to another value, such as like doing 2 is equal to 2, or player.name is equal to WooleyWool, just like working with booleans, and they just return whether the statement is true or false. Next are instances. This one may be a little bit hard to understand at first, but think of it as an object. Parts are an object, layers are an object, and much more. Instances have properties that you can look at, such as like the size, the position, name, etc. So if I go back to Studio just for 1 second, I'm so sorry for the green, it's kind of blinding, but the base plate is an instance. The instance has properties. Yeah. So that's just an example live. And the last one being nil, it's literally nothing. You can use nil to like see if something exists, and if you can't find it, then there's nothing. It doesn't exist. Cool. All right. And finally, I just wanted to go over arrays. You may know arrays. Arrays are just like a list of things. They can hold anything, such as the different types as I mentioned, such as numbers, instances, strings, booleans, and even nothing. We can use arrays for getting the list of players in our game to execute a specific action on them, such as maybe like, teleporting them. To access a member of an array, you'll have to call the array alongside its index. Indexes can be anything, but just not nil. And by default, they are set to a number. I'm going to go into depth in the future, in like future slides, or I guess later in the tutorial, to show like how you can work with arrays or even dictionaries to get specific things to work. In this case, data. And here's just like one thing you need to remember. In other languages, the index typically starts at 0. So like in Python, in order to call like the first element, it's just like call it 0. But in Lua, it starts at 1. Remember that. I forget sometimes, but remember. And now that we know about the different types that can be used in games, let's start diving into variables, a way to store these values. So here's a simple variable. My variable is equal to 5. We declare at the beginning of the line that this variable that this is a variable with the term local. Next, we need to name our variable. In this case, I just named it my variable. I know, very touching name. And now we can set the value of my variable to something. In this case, I set it to 5, but as I mentioned, you can set the variable to be anything, such as those different types that I mentioned. Like I said, they don't disappear, they can't hide. So, make sure you know those. But by default, it can be set to nil, which, as I mentioned earlier, it means nothing. So here's another example of declaring a variable. In this case, I am setting it to our base plate. So we declare at the beginning of the line that this is a variable with the term local. Next, we need to name our variable. In this case, I named it to base plate. And now we can set the value of base plate to the base plate that is located in the workspace. And when you're trying to work with different objects, remember it's like a hierarchy, so you'll have to call like the class, workspace, and then actually get to the object. Cool. And you remember this that we wrote earlier in the command prompt or the command bar? We can simplify this down, make it nicer. So we can use that variable base plate, set it to the brick color to random. This is a lot simplified down, just so that we're not having to repeatedly call workspace.baseplate over and over. This may be like something really simple now, but like when you have longer and longer names, it's very nice that you have a variable. Alrighty, and now let's move forward and start working with if and else statements. Yeah, so these are just used to have like certain lines of code execute if the logic is true. So let's just start off with, our variable. We have x, and we set it to the number 5. What's highlighted is our logic statements. These are used to identify if what we are passing is true or false. In this case, we are just trying to see if the value x is equal to 5. And because it is equal to 5, it will run the highlighted print statement. And if we change that value of x to like 4, for example, it is no longer true. And the else statement will run and print what is highlighted. Now I added in an else if statement. This just pretty much means that if the original statement isn't true, and the next if statement x is less than 5, we'll run and check to see if it's true. And if it's not true, then it'll just run false. So what's highlighted right now is going to run because x is equal to 5. But if we change the value to 4, the first if statement is going to check to see if 4 is equal to 5, which it isn't. And the else if statement is going to run now and see that 4 is less than 5. So that print statement is going to execute. But if we change it to a value like 10, both the if and else if statements are no longer true. So the else will execute in the print statement side of the build. Cool. Alrighty. Are there any questions thus far before I go on to like loops? I want to just make sure everyone is, on the same page. Just checking the chat. I'll give it like 5 seconds. No? Okay. All right. If you have any questions, let me know. I will stop. All right. So let's switch over to loops. Loops are essentially like mini code that will keep looping until an endpoint. So like an example being, the for loop. What this does is it loops through a table of values, also known as, arrays. So x is our declared variable, and it's set to an array of values. This is where our loop is going to be declared. I is the index in our table, and v is the value that is currently being looped through. We call in the pairs. We call in pairs with x so that we can go through each of the values in x with its pair being the index and its associated value. The for loop can only loop through tables, mainly used with tables, dictionaries, contents of a folder, etc. And after the loop is ran, the print statement will end. So yeah, all right. I want to do a quick little drawing to like better visualize how they work, because I know from the past that people have mentioned that loops are a bit confusing to understand. So I want to just quickly like draw over it just so you guys can see. So this is my little drawing program. So let's just say we have these boxes, and in each of these boxes, let's just say we have 1, 2, and 3. Sorry for my drawings. And we want to set up some sort of for loop to go through, each of these different values. So as I mentioned, we're going to have our index. So we'll have I. Oh, okay. We'll have I. There you go. And then we're going to have v. Remember, v is the value and I is our index. So let's start going through each of the different values, and I'll explain as we go through like how it essentially works. So let's start off with our first index. So we're going to send over I to be positioned over here, as well as our v. As I mentioned, I is going to be the current index that it's at. So let me just change the number so that it like visualizes a lot better. Imagine this is 5. Okay, so we have I. I, as I mentioned, is going to be at the current index. And with Lua, the first index is always going to be 1. So remember, with I, it's going to be set equal to 1. And for our value, it's going to be the current value in the array. And in this case, we have our array of 5, 2, 3. So the current value being 5. Cool. And now what we're going to do is we're going to want to shift over because the loop is going to keep going through each of the different values. So if we shift over, we'll go over to our next value in our array. So I is going to be set equal to 2 because we're at the second position, and our value is going to now be 2. And now we're going to go to the next value, and I is going to be equal to 3, and V is going to also be equal to 3. And once we get through all the different elements, this is going to move over. Oh, we reach the end. For loop is executed. So that's just an example of how for loops go. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, cool. All right, let's go back to more programming. Okay. Now let's talk about functions. Functions are primarily used to help prevent code from being repeated and making code easier to read. So, imagine having like really long lines of code and it's very repetitive. So maybe you want to create some sort of functions to help, slim it down a little bit, make it so that you're able to reuse code so you don't have to keep copying and pasting to reuse it repeatedly. Because imagine having to edit it once and then you have to go through like 5 different times to edit it also. So that's why I use functions. So we declare that this is a function using the word function. We need to name our function. In this case, I just named it my function. We can pass in parameters to this function, like a number or instance. In this case, it's just empty, just to keep it simple. And we can put in the code that we want to run when the function is called in the function's body. In this case, just hide there. And after we create our function, we need to call it so that the function runs. So I just called the my function with the open and close parentheses. And if you have any parameters, you pass in those parameters inside or in between those different parentheses. So here's an example using a while loop. I didn't go over what while loops are, but essentially it's another loop for how while loops work. Essentially, it's going to keep looking at that logic statement. In this case, the x is greater than 0. Hopefully you can see my little mouse. And it's going to keep seeing whether or not that is true. And if it is true, it's going to keep printing or keep running whatever's inside of the loop body until it is no longer true. So here's our example. We call the function, the countdown function that we created and pass in that value. In this case, I just passed in 5, and it will loop through and keep counting down and print liftoff when complete. Nice. All right. So in addition to creating our own functions, Roblox also has lots and lots of different pre-built functions that you can use in your game. So for this talk, I'll be going over the function, get player from character. This is just going to return that player instance. It's going to be really nice when you're working with players. This is the name of the function, get player from character, fancy. And then this is what we're going to be passing in for our parameter. In this case, we're going to be passing in the character of the player. And this is what the function is going to be returning. In this case, the player. Functions don't always have to return things, but sometimes functions do. It's just dependent on what the functionality is going to be. So here's some example. Well, here's like some example code. First, we want to get that player class. Sometimes for certain classes, not with workspace, but you'll have to define some sort of variable that will get the player's class or the different class that you're working with. In this case, players. You'll have to do it for replicated storage, server script service, server storage, etc. But not workspace. I don't know why. Next, we will be declaring a variable that holds an arbitrary character model. Once we get into how to create your own obby, it will make a lot more sense. But right now, it is just an arbitrary one. We will create that player variable that will pass in the arbitrary code, the character variable. And next, we will check to see if the player is not nil. And if it isn't, print its name. Cool. All right. Before I go on to events, this is the last part of the talk before we actually get hands-on and create our own obby. Are there any questions or anything before I go through? Just want to make sure. I've been yapping for a little bit. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, we have a question here.
Yes. I don't know if there was a question. I cannot hear it.
You want to come over here? Earlier, you mentioned that Roblox comes with a bunch of functions like out of the box, and I was kind of wondering what sort of functions are already like made for us.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, you can work with getting the player from like the character. There's one like if you're working with like animations, such as like working with object animations. There's like tweens. I'll go I won't talk about it specifically in this talk, but I can lead you to a resource with like what tweens are. But you can you can create different tween objects that you can use for animating. Other functions being like goodness, I'm blanking out. There's different functions. You could have the object be moved using the pivot to function, which will just position the object to wherever you would like it to be. You can destroy objects, so you'll need to call destroy. You can clone objects. So Roblox has all these pre-built functions. They all go with the different instances. It just is really dependent on what the instance is. Usually anything that's a part or like a base part will have clone, destroy, pivot to, etc. Whereas like different classes, such as players, will have their respective functions.
Okay, so it's like a bunch of util functions for all the different instances then.
Yes.
Okay,
Much.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's go in the final area with events. There's a lot. You can pretty much with events, you can think of it of like when you can think of events where like a certain event will occur, such as hovering your mouse over a button, or even like touching a part, or even having a player join. So like for instance, as I mentioned, want to check if a player joined or left, Roblox has you covered. A use case for this could be like, working with the player's data, such as like loading or even saving it. Oh my goodness, Declan. And then you want to see if, like, for instance, an object was added to a folder or model. Roblox has you covered. You can use case for this to see if, like, for instance, like a coin was added so that you could animate it. But the one that we're going to be mainly looking at today is the touched event. Yeah. Essentially what the touched event is going to be doing is, if something touches the instance, it's going to fire. So, the event name being touched, this is what it's going to be returning to us when the event is fired. And this is just like, the return event connection. So here's some example code. You see we have a part and we're going to have like this touched function. So this is the object that we're going to be working with, the part and the workspace. And this is the function that we are using when the touched event fires. This is called this is for like calling the actual touched event. So you're going to want to, call that touched event. And this is connecting the function when the event is fired, in this case, our touched function. Here's another example from that previous example using getPlayerFromCharacter. We can use the code we made earlier for identifying the player's name. We can use it here. So notice that when we call getPlayerFromCharacter, we pass in the parts.parent because we are trying to get the actual character from the player, but you can't really get the player's. You can't really get the player from the character's foot, if that makes sense. Alrighty, cool. Not yet. We're not moving forward yet. Okay. So let's actually get hands-on and take all these different things I talked about in the past 30 minutes and actually see it in play. And I will go over it as we're speaking. I am not testing you. I am not quizzing you. This ain't a college class, I promise. Okay. All right. So you have your different place. Just gonna. Cool. So you have your different place right here. Very nice, very green. But let's actually set up some sort of obby. So, the first thing that comes to mind with like creating an obby is we need that we need those kill bricks, like something that's gonna if I touch it, I die. I'm done. Cooked. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to, sorry, I need to turn on my slides. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is we want to first create that part. I know that yesterday you guys went over creating different objects, so hopefully this should be simple, but if not, I will go step by step just so I'm not leaving anyone behind. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to go under, okay, never mind. We're going to go into the workspace and you're going to add a part. So you just press a little plus and find part. Cool, nice. Here's a part, very pretty, but it doesn't look really kill bricky. So let's make it a lot more kill bricky. So I'm going to scale it a little bit. And I'm going to also want to set its color. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to set its color to be red. Nice. Now it looks a bit kill bricky. So I'm going to move it a little closer to the spawn. Nice. I'm just going to give you guys a few minutes not to go too ahead. Or a few seconds. Yeah. Okay, cool. And now what we're gonna want to do, can you show us, oh, can you show it to me? Long spinning kill breaks so that players can, yeah, I can show that after I go over the basics of creating the kill breaks. Yes. Okay. So now what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to create some sort of script to make this kill brick, this thing actually do something, because if you go and test it, it just sits there and does a whole lot of nothing. So we don't want that. So what I'm going to also do too, just to make sure that the brick stays in place, is I'm going to set it to be anchored. This will just make it so that you can't push it around, because that'd be kind of weird if you could push that around with a kill brick. Cool. All right, and I'm going to also name this part, just to make it easy when I'm calling it, kill brick. All right, and then inside of server script service, you're going to add that little plus and click script, and voila. There's your little interface for programming. Cool. So initially, what your first step is going to be is, as I mentioned earlier, is you're going to want to create some sort of variable to get the kill brick. See, it's all coming together. So we're going to use, local and, define our variable. In this case, I'm just going to name it kill brick. Very fitting name. And we're going to want to set it to the actual kill brick that's inside the workspace. So I'm going to do workspace dot kill brick. All right, see, now we got it. Nice. All right. And now we're going to actually want to do something with the kill brick, because it's not really exciting if it just sits there. So what we're going to do is, as I mentioned, we have that little touched event, because we're going to want it so that when the player touches it, they die. So what we're going to do is we're going to do kill brick dot touch. That's the event. And like one thing too is, like, you can see right here that there's different events. There's like touch ended, which means whenever something stops touching it. But in this case, we're just going to work with touch. And we're going to want to connect. And let's create some sort of function for the actual, killing, or like what is going to happen. So, all right, I'm going to create a new function, and we're just going to call it touched. Oh, if I can type. I'm just going to get touched. And remember, with like different events, they always pass in or like return to us different objects or different things based on what the event is doing. In this case, it's going to return to us that instance that touches it. So we're just going to name it hit. And there you go. We have something that's touching it. But what we really want is the character from the player. So what we're going to first want to do is we're going to need to call the player class so that we can call that function the get player from character. So I'm going to create a variable, name it players, and set it equal to, getting the actual service, in this case, players. Oh, yeah. Oh, if I know how to. Control plus, no. Okay, give me 1 second. I will figure it out. It used to be control plus. Script. I thought it was control plus. I'm trying that, and it's not just doing it.
Rising control and scroll wheel, maybe? That's how I do it.
Oh, thank you. Is that better? Okay, cool. All right. So I'm just gonna. Okay, there we go. Oh my god. Okay, there. I won't touch it. All right. So thanks again. Okay, so we have as I mentioned, we need to get the player from the character. So we needed to, create that variable to get the player class. So first what we're going to want to do is create that variable that's going to get us that player. So you're going to do player, local player is going to be equal to, the AI is getting ahead of me, players, get player from character. And as I mentioned earlier too, when you're trying to get the player from the character and you're just doing the hit, you need to get the character itself, because when you touch it, it might be the foot, it might be the hand, it might be the arm, and you can't really get the character from that. So you're going to want to do hit that parent. Oh, parent. There you go. So now you may have the player. I say may because sometimes it might be touching other things such as the base plate. So what you're going to want to do before actually doing any sort of working with the system is you're going to want to do if the player exists. So in this case, if player is not equal to nil, then we're going to actually work around and do some stuff with it. Cool. All right, so I want to show one thing. Okay. So in order to actually kill the player, if you look inside my workspace right here, there's this little object called a humanoid. And if you look inside its properties, there's all these different thanks, Declan, with all these different properties, such as if they're sitting, jumping, all that kind of stuff. And one of the properties that we need to look at is the health, which is right here. So right now it's up to 100, but if I set it to 0, I die. And that's what we're trying to work with. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to call that humanoid object that is inside the player right here, and set it to 0. Cool. So if I stop it, go to the script. So like I mentioned, we're going to want the actual humanoid. So I'm going to call a new variable or declare a new variable, humanoid. And with the character, since we know that hit.parent is going to be the character, we're just going to want to do, hit.parent.humanoid. But here's one thing I want to mention. Sometimes the humanoid doesn't exist, and we want to check for that. So another built-in function that Roblox has is something called find first child. Essentially what this means is it's going to look to see if this specific object that you're looking for exists. So in this case, I'm trying to look for the humanoid. If it doesn't exist, it'll tell us. If it does exist, it'll tell us that it does exist with the object. So what we're going to do is just check to see if it exists. So I'm going to do if humanoid is not equal to nil, because we want to work with an actual humanoid. Then essentially you're just going to do humanoid.health is equal to 0. Cool. There's your touch function. But remember one thing, we need to connect the function. We need to connect the event to that function that we just created. So we're just going to do touch down here. I'll give you guys a few seconds before I press play so you can see it. Okay, so if I press play, hopefully it works. I'll check the output, just make sure there's no errors. Perfect. And if I go and touch it, bam, you die. Hopefully it works for all of you. Just one more time. Cool. So if I stop it, I'm just going to display the script a few more seconds so everyone can see it. Get a sip of water while that goes through so I don't dry up. Okay. All right, cool. So we have one kill break, right? But it's not fun if there's just one. Kind of gets boring. So we want to add 2, right? But 2 is not fun, so let's add 3. And that is really tight for jumps, but just live with it. Okay, that's cool. But now we have 3 kill breaks, and our code right here only deals with 1. So you remember that that very nice for loop? Yeah, see, that's gonna come in handy. This is a for loops, like I mentioned, are really nice when you're able to loop through and work with different objects, and we're gonna be able to set their different touched functions. So if I just close out of this for 1 second and go back to our little draw. And I'm just gonna undo everything really quickly. So imagine these as our different kill bricks. We have 3 so far. And so what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna loop through each of them. So I'm gonna go here first, and I'm gonna wanna give it that touched. So I'm gonna give it T. And then I'm gonna go over here. The for loop is gonna go on to the next object, and we're gonna wanna give it that T again, that touched event. And again, we're gonna go to the last object, give that T. And essentially, that's why we want to use for loops. We're able to go through each of the different objects, give it the different properties or even connections set up so that we're able to have it all work. Because imagine having to go through, with the 3 objects right here, create their variables like kill brick 1, kill brick 2, kill brick 3, then do the touch, then give it that function, all those different functions. And just imagine doing that for like 1,000 different objects. It's gonna take forever. Like 19 lines, more like 1,000,000. We don't want that. So that's why we use for loops. We're able to loop through each of the different objects. So one thing we're gonna wanna do before we do that is inside your workspace, let's create a folder and let's name it kill bricks, plural. Cool. And what you're gonna want to do is take all the different kill bricks that you created, whether that be 3, 1, 0, I don't know, take all of them and place it inside kill bricks, the folder. Nice. And one thing I want to show inside the output. So if I do, there's this built-in function that Roblox has for objects or instances and all that kind of stuff named get children. So if I do workspace.killbricks, get children, and print that out, you can see right here that it prints out in this array, and it's going to have all the different objects that are in here. See? So that's what we're going to be able to use for our for loop as that array. All right, so let's set it up. So we no longer need this function killbrick. Rather, we're just going to name it killbricks and do workspace.killbricks. Cool. And now we're going to want to set up that for loop. So remember, we have the for I being the index, and we can just name the name of the value being killbrick, or sometimes you can just name it v. It just depends, preference. For I and killbrick, I being index, killbrick being the killbrick itself, in pairs. And inside the little parentheses, we're going to want to pass in the get children. So we're going to do workspace.killbrick, or actually, sorry, killbricks.get children, because we have the function right here. And then there you go. Now we have that loop. And essentially, we can just take this line right here that I wrote earlier and put it inside here. Just make sure you name it correctly. And there you go. Now it's going to go through each of the different killbricks that are inside the folder that's in the Explorer right here and set up its touch connection. So if I play quickly, I'll show you the code, I promise. You'll see these. If I just touch one of them, I die. How exciting. Cool. So I'm just going to show the code. Let you guys see it. Do you guys have any questions before I move forward? Yay. Mine is not working. I don't know what to do. Kill block. Make sure your touched is uppercase T when you're connecting it. Because you name the function touched with a capital T, but you're calling touched with a lowercase t. So make sure you do that. Oh, okay. Good to know. Did not die after fixing that. Oh, did I fix the code? Oh, there's something else. Make sure also that like you have kill block and then kill block again for like your variable names, make sure you like change it to something different. Skill issue. Yeah, it is a skill issue. Should have known. So like for instance, you have kill block as like your defined variable at the top. Make sure you name it like kill blocks, so it's really easy to work with. And then you know call kill blocks when you're doing the get children. Okay, all right. So we have our kill bricks. That's nice. But another thing that we want to take into consideration too is, you know, checkpoints. Because what if you have like 100 stages? It would be kind of not fun if you die at like stage 99 and you have to go back and start over a skill issue. You know, that's not fun. So we're going to want to set up some sort of checkpoint. So I'm going to add a part to the workspace. And this is going to be used for our checkpoint. I'm going to make it into a checkpointy kind of object. Look at that. Very checkpointy, if I do say so myself. I'm going to put it right here. And I'm also going to add another one right here. I'm going to take these and put them right here. And now we have some sort of obby. That's cool. And I'm just going to put one more at the end so that if you get through all that, you got something. Okay, cool. So we have our checkpoints. Now we need them to actually do something. So you're probably starting to see a trend. What we're going to first want to do is create some sort of folder. So I'm going to do folder. I'm going to put all the checkpoints in here. So I'm going to name it checkpoints. And I'm going to take all of these and put it right here. Now, here's an important thing too. So we're going to want to keep track of the different checkpoints, especially like when you start making like an obby that's going to be like in production. You know, you're going to have to store that data somewhere. I'm not going to go over like the data too much. I'm just going to give you like mock data that you can work with, but not using like data storage. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to need to name each of these different objects to like different stages. So, you know, we have our first checkpoint here. So we're going to want to name it 1. Take our second object, name it 2. And then take our last one and name it 3. I'm just going to wait a few seconds. Just so you guys see it and have it set up. Cool. All right, let's go back to the script. So you're probably going to, you know, first step, get that variable, so checkpoints, and set it equal to our workspace.checkpoints. This is going to get us all those different objects. Oh, fancy. Then what we're going to want to do is set up another for loop. So I'm going to do for I for checkpoint in checkpoints get children. Oh, sorry. Okay, so just for another preface, another thing that you can do too, so Roblox has recently changed it so that you don't have to use the word pairs. So you can just literally call the array right here just by doing in this. I do it now by like default, so my apologies for not doing the pairs, but this is just another way. It's how Roblox has set it up. I'll present both ways just so you can see it, but they both act the same. So you don't have to worry too much about, you know, that syntax. Okay, and literally we're going to do very similar here, but we're going to need to create another function. So I'm just going to name it function touched checkpoint. Still pass in hit, and there's that. So I'm just going to do checkpoint down here. Oh, not checkpoints. Checkpoint dot touched and connect it to touched checkpoint. There you go. Let me see if there's anything. So right now we're looping through. We're setting up the checkpoints touch event, and we're going to pass in this new function, the touch checkpoint. Cool. All right. So in here, you know, we got our touch. So, you know, we're first literally going, I'm just going to copy and paste it just to make it really simple. I'm going to take the player and just checking to see if the player exists. So I'm going to do this. take this, put it in here. And just get rid of this code because we no longer need that. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go over another thing. I'm gonna go back to my little drawing board so I can go over it. So another thing with arrays is you can set up essentially what's called a hash table, or what Roblox refers to as a dictionary. A dictionary is essentially setting up some sort of key value pair, meaning like you're going to set up a key and you're going to set it equal to a value. So by default, Roblox has it set up so that, let me just set a color, when you're adding in like an object to an array, it's going to start off with the first index. I almost put 0. It's going to set up the first index to be equal to whatever that object is. So you have part, P for part. Maybe you'll have another object. And that's also going to be equal to another part. This is what Roblox does by default. But you can create your own dictionary. So if I get rid of all these, you're going to be able to set up your own key. So in this case, maybe I want to set it to be my name. So I'm going to set it to be, W. Oh, that's a bad W, but it's okay. And I want to set it to be equal to maybe some sort of number. So like 5. And another one being like Declan, for instance. He's been chatting a lot, so we're going to use him as an example. And let's just say he has a value of 10. And so when you're trying to get the different values of like whatever is stored in the dictionary, essentially you're just going to call the dictionary and pass in that index, whether that be W, D, or the other players like A, B, C, D, etc. So you're going to be able to create your own dictionary. And so what our use case for this is going to be is to essentially set up some sort of like tracking system to get the checkpoint that the player is at so that we're able to change it. And with the keys, with the W and D, you can set it to be anything, just not nil. So you can set it to be a number. You can set it to be, well, actually, I lied. Not nil and not Booleans. I don't think Booleans can work. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that one can work. But you can set it to be strings. You can set it to be numbers like these, and also instances like this, but not these. I don't think Boolean. I could be wrong, but I don't think Boolean, but I definitely not nil. But you can also set the value, like I'm gonna use a different color, so it's like visually. You can set the value of these to be any of these types. You can set it to any of these types. So it can be number, it can be string, it can be Boolean, it can be instance, it could be nil. So remember that. It's gonna be very handy. So cool. So if we go back to Studio, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to define our checkpoint data. So I'm just going to create a new variable, call it checkpoint data. And I'm going to set it to an empty dictionary because as players join, we're going to want to set up their data. And as I mentioned earlier, we have that event that Roblox has, which is the player added. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up that player added. So I'm going to do players.player added and connect it. Another neat trick that you can do so that you're not having to always, create functions is you can create an inline function. So all you have to do is just do pass in function, pass in what you're looking for. In this case, just the player, and bam, there's an inline function. And what we're going to want to do is just essentially set their checkpoint data upon first joining to be the first stage. So I'm going to do checkpoint data, and we can pass in the player itself and set it equal to 1. And it's going to set up that key value. So if we go back to our little drawing, it's going to set our first instance, whether that be me, Declan, whoever. It'll be set to the player instance, whoever joined, and set it equal to not 5 or 10. It'll just be 1. Cool. Oh, sorry. Okay, there you go. So we have that. Let me just check chat. All right. Yeah, that's my tower defense game. Oh, I need to work on it. Okay, so we have the player added. Now, another thing too is, when you're joining the game, what if like you're at stage 2 or 3 or 10? Wouldn't you want it so that it like positions yourself there? So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check to see if the character is added. This is another event that you can look for. It's essentially when the player joins and the character is loaded in so that we're able to position it. So I'll type it through. It's going to be player dot character added. This is going to be our event that we're looking for. We're going to connect it, and we're going to put that inline function, and we're going to get the character itself. All right. So this is going to essentially return us that character when it joins, or even when it respawns, all that kind of stuff. The character is added. And then we're going to want to get the checkpoint instance itself. So I'm going to do the checkpoint, which is equal to, oh my goodness, the AI is beating me to it. We're going to do checkpoints, and we're going to find the first child. And what we're looking for is, 1 or 2 or 3. We're just trying to look for what the data is at that current point. So I'm going to do checkpoint data and pass in the player. This is how we're able to pass in the key player, and it's going to return us the value, whether that be 1, 2, 3, or whatever number of checkpoints that you added. Okay. And now that we have the checkpoint, this is another built-in function that Roblox has created. I mentioned it earlier. It's called pivot2. What this is going to do is we're going to be able to position the character to the checkpoint itself. So bear with me. We're going to do character. We're going to call pivot2. And then if you look inside the checkpoint, look inside its properties, you'll see there's this property called CFrame. CFrame is going to be like the coordinate frame. It's the position that it's at that very moment. So what we're going to be able to do is just call that CFrame. So I'm going to pass in checkpoint dot CFrame. And just to make sure that, because when you're doing like the C-frame, it's going to put you at like the center of the object, and you might fall through the map, and that might not be fun. So what we're going to do just to combat that is make it so that it'll put you at that position and add like 5 studs above, or like 5 numbers above, or height of 5 above. But I hope that makes sense. So what we're going to do is just do times C-frame. You can only multiply with C-frames. You're going to have the X, Y, and Z. So we're just going to do 0, 5, and 0. And this is just going to position them to go above that checkpoint, and it should set them there. Nice. And then what we're going to do is with our touched checkpoint, just to come back and loop it all together, is we're just going to essentially set the checkpoint data of that player to be what's it called? Hit.name. Or wait, sorry, not hit. Okay, sorry, I lied. So what we're gonna do is, instead of having this function, the touch checkpoint, it's gonna be a little bit difficult just because we don't actually have the checkpoint. So we're gonna just do an inline function, just to make it simpler. So you're just gonna, set the hit, and then literally just whistles, act like this didn't exist. And you're just gonna put the code. Oh my god, look at that! That's so great. What function? Touch checkpoint? Never heard of it. Look at that. Okay, cool. Now what you can do is just set the checkpoint that you currently touched to be checkpoint.name. Cool. I'm just gonna test to make sure, so I don't give incorrect code. Perfect. So look at that. I'm here. I can jump. I'm really bad. Oh, I'm really bad at hobbies. Oh, look at that. I touched it even though I died. And I just realized too, we need to make sure that we anchor them because those checkpoints are a little flimsy. So I'm gonna go through. Set that. Set it to anchored. Bam. Okay, cool. So if I press play and I die, oh no, it'll take me back to whatever the current checkpoint I'm at. Cool. And if I just walk around, oh my god, I just did the obby. Look at me go. And I just touch it. It'll put me at stage 2. Cool. And YouTube, I'm so great. All right. And that's pretty much the checkpoint system. So I'm going to leave this up there for everyone to see it. And that's pretty much a very basic obby. Look at that. You made an obby. That's step 1 to being an awesome developer. All right. Ian or Declan, are there any questions? Anything? That's pretty much a wrap on that part. Before I just go on to talking about like what's next.
Declan's trying to finish his obby right now. It's not working, so.
Oh, poor thing. And I can just like copy this code over. How do I? Oh my god. There's a lot of moving parts with that one.
Well, someone was wondering if you were gonna make the place file available for people as well.
Yes, I can. There's like an issue right now with Roblox with like publishing. Let me see if I can like.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hopefully
let me
that's
see if I can say
solved.
that. Yeah. Okay. Yep, I won't publish it. That's just that. Okay, there you go. I put the little asset inside the thing. Don't publish your experiences, like Gana said, or you won't have an experience because it'll be moderated. Yeah. Okay. So let me go over, moving forward. How is that going to look like for all of you? Okay, let me just get my little. Okay. All right, moving forward. That was a lot, right? Look at that. You just coded an offie. Look at you, pat on the back, yay. But that's just like, the beginning of your programming journey on Roblox. And maybe it's your first time programming at all. So look at that. You know how to program with Lua or, the basics of Lua. Woo-hoo. Essentially, keep moving forward. Here are like some of the 4 objectives I have for you, like after this workshop, that you can keep going at it. So, the first one being like referring to the creator documentation. For those that don't know, like those little images that we'll be checking. Essentially, those little screenshots I was showing you, like with the different touched event, the different functions, all those different things, those were coming directly from the creator documents or documentations. So refer to that. It's very nice. It's like your best friend. If you're stuck on a coding issue, taking a look at all the documentation for it will help you, like, as you get to see different cases, what functions and events that exist that can be used. So that is something that I recommend using. Number 2, understanding and applying the server-client relationship. So I didn't really talk about it, but right now a lot of the code that we wrote, well, actually all the code that we wrote is backend code. It was setting up, touching the kill brick, touching the checkpoints, all of that. But there's front-end code. Games are displaying how many coins you have, what checkpoint you're at, ads, all those different products they can purchase. That's front-end code. So understanding, that server-client relationship is something that's really nice. So, you have those like cool little UI frames display how much money you have, or like, the different things that happen when you drag one part from one side to another. This is like, where that server-client relationship comes into play. It's like, there's that communication that goes on. So like, for instance, like if I want something to happen on the client, the server is going to be able to send out some sort of event, and that action is going to occur on the client. While I can't really go into full detail about it just because of time, even though there's like an hour left, it's really important to look into. There's very nice videos out there about discussing it, as well as the creator docs actually has information on how to work with it and what are some use cases. It's really crucial that you understand it, because this is the main framework of how games are going to work. Back-end code isn't everything. I know, I wish it was too. It's really nice. But we have that front-end system. So just make sure that you have that set up and understand it. It just makes your game a lot more interactive. All right, enough yapping about that. Next, learn more and explore. This is very corny to say, I know, learn more, explore, but I really mean it. One way I learned to program in general is just exploring further, whether that be, applying those different data structures. For those that don't know, in order to optimize your game, you have to introduce or implement data structures and algorithms. It's horrifying, but it does make your game run better and optimize. If you don't know it, it's okay. Let's keep it that way. But if you're going to go into it, if you're like CS, you're going to go into it. So knowing that, or even exploring it, is really nice. As well as creating your own objects. So there's object-oriented programming. You're able to create your own objects. So for instance, a part is its own object that Roblox has pre-built. But for instance, what if I want to expand that and make my own? So, learning that is very nice. And there's much more also that you can learn. This is learning all these different things have led me to creating more complex features in various different games and projects that I've worked on. Without learning further, you're essentially hindering yourself from valuable content that you can apply in your code, which, unfortunately can put you behind. So I learn something new every single day. I've been doing it since every day. So, it's very important that you get your toes wet, learn a little more, go into the deep end, but eventually it'll all start to make sense. And it'll be really nice when you're starting to create these really complex systems, because you'll be able to pick and choose different things that you've learned and apply it. And finally, if you're stuck on an issue or you need some sort of guidance, seek help. There are no wrong questions or wrong answers or none of that. You're learning. So one way to get help is going onto the developer forum. You can post your own questions or view to see if anyone had any similar questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. No one's gonna bite you. There might be vicious people, but I promise you, they won't bite you. No question is a stupid question. It just does not exist. It benefits you in the long run as you are learning, which will lead you to being a well-rounded programmer. Also, if you see someone else who is stuck and you may have a potential fix, help it out and answer. Let that cycle continue. I can't express how thankful I am to all those who have helped me. It has led me to where I am today on Roblox and even professionally. And, I always love to help out. So if you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask me. I don't bite. I promise I will help you. Also, if you don't want to ask anyone, there's that really nice, fancy Nancy tool called ChatGPT where you can just ask a question and it'll help you. But try to learn from it. It's really important. And yeah, you did it. Yay. Woohoo. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down, learn about programming, and hopefully we do have time for QA. Thank you so much for taking the time and listening. Hope you learned something new. Are there any questions? It's so quiet over here. I just see the chat. Thank you.
Yes, we have a question of what's the best way to approach the documentation? Because it can be pretty daunting because there's so many tabs and all that.
Oh yeah, it is. But okay, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna show you guys live. If I can type create. I'm just gonna go here. I don't want to show any of the work because it might leak something. I don't want to be and I don't want to get sued. Okay. So let's just say that you're at the creator docs. You won't see all this. It's just a random one I was looking at earlier. But oh, thank you. So let's just say I'm trying to work with a part, and with the part, maybe I want to learn about the touched event. So what you can do is in the little search bar right here, literally just put in what you're looking for. Part. Oh, look, base part, parts, or even just part itself right here. Oh my god, so slow. Okay, cool. Look at that documentation. So go over the different properties. Look at all those things that you can work with. Oh my goodness. And then, there's methods. Ooh, look at all these different functions that you can work with. So cool. And then there's even, oh, look, touched. Ooh, you just press touched, learn a little more about it. and then if it wants to load, it'll get there, but it'll just go over like the documentation. It'll just like literally just explore. It's set up nicely. It is overwhelming, but you can also, it's really nice to go through those different things. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to ask me a follow-up question. All right, next question. What is the most complex system that you've worked on, and what skills did you use for solving that problem? Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think. Okay, so you may have seen I worked on a tower defense game, and one of the mechanisms that goes into it is actually placing the troops. And with those troops, each troop has its own attack, its own stats, its own like animation, all these different moving parts. And so the most complex way was bringing that all together. So I had to really employ that object-oriented programming like lens, trying to make it so that I'm able to, have all these different troops have their different setups, different attacks, while also making it so that it's simple to call. So I had to create my own objects. I had to create like all these different animations that can be called, work on the server and client side, because on the server, it's going to take care of the attacking because and like dealing with damage, just because we don't want any exploitation, as well as like on the client, we want to actually display all those different attacks and different things. So it was a very complex system. And sometimes when there are bugs, it took me forever to identify. It was really nice when there's AI because it can really quickly do it for me, but I would take the time to look just to see. And it's just a lot of moving parts. So that is one of the most complex systems. I am working on another project right now. It is a bit complex because like we have like different, I don't want to go into details about how it works, but or what the game is, but essentially like we have different zones, and of those different zones, we wanted it so that rather than having it so that you're able to unlock things sequentially, it gives you all of the zones at once. So I had to create a system to do that, and it was very, very complex, but I was able to get it so that it does that, and it does it automatically. And what skills did I use? A lot of thinking, and like this whiteboard right here is very nice. You can draw things, and I love to draw out my solutions. So I would always use this to draw out my different things. It is very nice. I use it professionally too. It's called Excalidraw, so I'm just gonna link it. It's free, $3.99, and it's very nice. I highly recommend it. It's very, very nice. I use it when I was doing interviews for like data structures. I use it for my own systems. I even use it for object-oriented design. It's just very nice, and I highly recommend using it. Yeah, I recommend always drawing out your solutions. Cool. What's a thing you hate, and what's one thing you hate and one thing you love about Lua? Oh, okay. One thing I don't like about Lua, working with Python, one of the things I really like is like the different libraries that you can use, such as like working with different data structures. Data structures are a bit advanced, but like it just helps like making it really simple, or like I guess not simple, but like making it easier to create highly optimized code. I found that very nice with Python, calling those different data structures to create my own algorithms to do that. Lua doesn't have that. I have to create my own from scratch, which really stinks. And the one thing I love about Lua is just, it's really simple. It's not too difficult. It's not scary like C++, where you have to take care of typing and all these different moving parts at once. It's really simple. Are you for or against curly braces in Lua? Well, in order for your code to work, you have to have the curly braces. So I have to be for it, or your code's not gonna work. But I know that other languages don't use it. They use like just square brackets. I don't mind. It just makes it prettier for me to read, I guess. So yeah. Any other questions? Keep them coming. Before you leave, you gotta play Wordle in the chat. It's a tradition. Okay, I will. I always have my first go-to word. Are there any questions though in general? Ian, in person?
All right,
Anyone online?
That should be it.
Nice.
Thank you so much for coming out. That was great. I'm sure everyone learned a lot about Lua today.
I did.
Declan says he did.
Yay. You're a programmer now.
You can make your own obby.
Can I make a stereotypical obby?
Okay. Yeah, other than that should be it. Again, thank you so much for coming out, and this was an amazing event.
Awesome.
And
Thank
yeah,
you, thank you, thank you.
And for everyone here, we will have more events in the next upcoming days, so please make sure to come to those. I see Sarah to lobby too. It's great. And yeah,
Nice.
Brooklyn, do you have anything you want to say? Come to Jose's. Yeah, we have tomorrow will be a Blender workshop with Jose, so make sure we come to that.
Cool. Nice, nice, nice. All right.
Okay, thank you everyone else for coming out.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, bye everyone, and have a great rest of your week.